3 counties, 24 cities, working together, accomplishing more than any of us could alone. Whether your roots run generations deep, or you recently moved to Greater Portland, you are a part of Metro, the nation's only regional government elected by the people. Planning for the future, preserving what we love. Let's keep our region thriving for decades to come.
Hello, I'm Rory. You may have seen me at my desk as you came into the Metro Regional Center. Welcome. The Council Chambers is located on the 3rd floor of this building. In the event of a fire or a fire alarm, please exit through the northeast corner of the room. Go down the steps to the 2nd floor, then continue straight ahead past my desk and exit through the main entrance to the plaza outside. The nearest defibrillator is located right outside of the front desk at the top of the steps to Grand Avenue. Thanks for joining us at the Metro Regional Center. We hope you have a safe day.
All right, excellent. We have a quorum, so I will call our business meeting to order. Georgia, if you could please call roll.
Absolutely. Counselor Simpson?
Present.
Counselor Rosendahl?
Present.
Counselor Wong?
Present.
Counselor Lewis? Present. Counselor Nolan? Right here. Council President Gonzalez.
Here, thank you. Everyone's in attendance, very nice. We will now have public communication on non-agenda items. Georgia, if you could again please describe to our audience procedures for how we engage in public communication.
Absolutely. And Council President, I also want to note that our captions are dysfunctioning right now, but we should have them back up shortly.
Thank you.
If you are testifying on non-agenda items, now is the time to do so. If you are testifying in person, please sign up by filling out a blue card in the back of the room and bringing it up to me. If you're testifying on Zoom or by phone, please sign up by using the raise hand function in the reactions or more menus or by dialing *9. When it is your turn to testify, I'll call on your name or phone number. For those on Zoom, click accept to be promoted to a panelist. Your Zoom window will close briefly before you rejoin as a panelist, and you can turn on your camera if you'd like. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes. Timer begins when you begin speaking. If you are testifying in person, their timer is located at your testimony table, on the wall, and on the digital screen. Please state your name for the record before testifying. You do not need to give your physical address. If you are testifying on an agenda item and have not signed up in advance, please fill out a blue card in the back of the room and bring it up to me now or anytime before the agenda item, or you can raise your virtual hand at the beginning of the agenda item that you wish to testify on. So, Council President Gonzalez, we do have one person who has signed up to testify in advance, and that is Sharon Nassett. I have promoted them to a panelist. Sharon, your time will begin. And you start speaking. Sharon is on, but is having a little bit of trouble. I think it's just taking a second. All right, Sharon, I've sent you a request to unmute. Maybe that will help with your tech.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sharon. You can start.
Good morning. Thank you. Sorry. For the record, I am Sharon Nassett. Good morning, council members, President Gonzalez. I sent a package yesterday having to do with the Rose Quarter project. I started in 2000 with the I-5 Trade and Transportation Partnership, which, as you know, includes the I-5 corridor, which includes the Rose Quarter. And at that time sent in several, actually, I was the North Portland Business Association Transportation Chair and sent in several different alternatives and things that our community needed. And I sent in a Rose Quarter alternative design that gave on and off exits to I-5. The Rose Quarter, as you know, has approximately 40,000 seats, and then it has the vendors, it has the people that perform the shows. It's a city of its own and needs its own on and off ramps. At that time, we decided that the community that a full environmental impact statement needed to be done, and it was removed. The CRC, when it opened, also started with the full I-5 corridor. And again, they decided the community needed an complete environmental impact statement, and our projects were removed. When they came back this time, they came back with an environmental assessment. As you are aware, because you are MPOs, and the only MPO dealing with the Rose Quarter, they don't have to look at the impacts. So where are the pictures of what's happening to the school that's being closed and shuttered or not? Historic houses that are being taken? Where are all the impact pictures? There are none. They decided that it was just an assessment, not a need for an entire look at what this impact would do to us. What's the benefits? What's the impacts? We don't know. They haven't been explored. We don't have any alternatives. We have a staff that comes out and says, this is it. It's the best thing out there. And we say, okay, so what do the other alternatives look like? There are no other alternatives. You cannot imply that yours is the best when you take the information and you don't give it out. So all of the data that I have put in and all of the drawings and all of the links have been disconnected right now while the process is on. I sent you the links. You can see it. We need a full environmental impact statement, and they can take the current data they have used on the AE and you go forward. It is not scrapping it. And if they tell you we don't deserve that, tell them they're wrong. We deserve the best. You're here to protect us and provide what we want. Thank you and have a lovely day.
Thank you, Sharon. And Council President Gonzalez, I am not seeing anyone else who signed up to testify in the virtual or physical audience.
Thanks, Georgia. Sharon, thank you for joining us. I will now close testimony, and we will go to our first presentation. We have an update on the proximity and experience to parks in nature. We know that nature close to home is one of the things that makes this region incredibly special. It's one of the topics that I and other counselors have brought up, is wanting to know more about how parks and nature works to define, measure, and increase access to parks, trails, and our natural areas. We heard about this topic previously when discussing the 2023 Parks and Nature Bond Audit. So today we have an opportunity to hear a little more from staff on the department's impact portfolio-wide perspective as a landowner, park provider, and a funder. With us today, we have John Blasher, Parks and Nature Director, and Beth Cohen, Strategic Funding Program Manager. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Councilor Gonzalez, or President Gonzalez, and councilors. Thanks for having us today. John Blasher, he, him, his, your Parks and Nature Director, joined by our Strategic Funding Program Manager, Beth Cohen. And as you mentioned, we're here to give an update on access related specifically to proximity and experience. And this is meant to help build your awareness of information and stories that are available. So our request for you today is to help identify areas where you'd like to maybe hear and learn more, or if there's additional questions that you have on some of this work. Go to the next slide, please. So being here today, we're hoping to be responsive to councilor questions about this broad topic of access and really looking related to proximity and experience and some of the key definitions and measurements. You may recall the last time we dedicated council meeting time on this topic was around the 2023 bond audit, and an update was presented in summer of 2024. So we'll be revisiting and building on some of what was shared previously. But since then, I know that this has been a topic of interest from counselors. And in some recent briefings, I asked each of you, what does access mean to you and your constituents? And some of the key themes that I heard in those conversations, I feel like we'll be sharing, what we share today will help to address and be responsive on that. Some of the things I heard was, we don't need a narrow definition. We want to ensure that we encompass sort of all the benefits. We want to be creative and expansive. Also want to make sure that definitions and measurements touch on community engagement, economic opportunities like supporting film and TV to maximize public benefits with economic development, public health role in connecting nature, green spaces for cooling, recreation, community activation, health benefits of nature. Also taking a regional view of this system of parks, trails, natural areas that acknowledges Metro's role and our local partners' roles. Also thinking about how are we making our sites better for everyone, communicating about opportunities to connect, share more information. Also recognize that being able to physically get to parks is a multimodal, and most of that responsibility lands with transportation agencies, but we can help play a role in that. And then also acknowledging that not every property or natural area needs to be developed into a park or formal access, and sometimes there's nature for nature, and the healthy ecosystem service that we provide is something that's been asked for in the region. So today our hope is to leave you with some of these main takeaways, that there's a lot of dimensions to the term access and holds a lot of importance and a lot of meaning. And you ask for more stories and data on many things, including the topic of proximity and experience when it comes to access. So we have those for you today and can share more at other times as well. Go to the next slide, please. So since 1995, the voters of the region have stood up for nature 6 times. We know that the highest priorities for voter support is clean water, protected habitat, and safe and clean parks. This is the heart of our mission. When voters are asked about priorities for parks, most of them focus on taking care of existing sites, not on building new ones. This aligns with what we hear as priorities for tribes, communities, and partners as well. As our tribal affairs team is engaging with tribes on priorities for Metro Parks and Nature work, we're hearing more about the importance of protecting habitat and clean water, for the importance of facilitating access to land in Portland and around the region to help continue the cultural vitality. In many ways, this mirrors what we've heard from community engagement over the years about the importance of healthy habitat to residents. No matter where they live, even if you're miles from a park, trail, or natural area, clean water, healthy habitat is important for all of us. And so some of those key themes we hear also is taking care of what you have, protect nature for nature's sake. And then when asked about how to improve our sites, we hear a lot of focusing on water access, providing gathering spaces, more benches to sit and observe, and universal accessibility, going above and beyond ADA compliance. As you hear more about progress in the bond and levy investments today in the future, remember that we're continuing to deliver on these promises. And I think with that, we'll go to the next slide. So reminder of just kind of Metro's role in the region. Our mission reflects some of these priorities that I discussed, and again, that focus on nature. But a big important piece also of our mission is established in our guidelines and policies, is helping people connect with nature. So our system plan sets out our mission, our role in the region, and how our work complements the system of local park providers. The system plan also establishes classifications for the Metro-owned sites, and that range from habitat preserves to regional destinations and sites that recognize. Some of our portfolio is designed for nature first and foremost, and some is more designed for recreational and human access. So we have these also governing documents and planning that helps us decide how are we planning for intentional formal access at our different sites. And finally, our latest Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Action Plan, we really talk about some of those recent investments through the bond and levy to ensure that we are articulating the aspirations around increasing access of inclusivity at our parks and natural areas. We can go to the next slide. So I want to take a moment or two to share some reminders of what we mean when we talk about nature, or talk about access at its most broad. Feel that this approach really helps to reflect what you've shared recently about some of the priorities for access. So that we employ a more expansive and creative look. We don't just talk about when people go to a park, we want to be able to talk about a comprehensive experience. How are communities involved in the planning process? What is procurement, as well as funds and contracts for folks to do parks and nature work, employment opportunities for Metro and others, physical park access and ADA accessibility. What are the park features and amenities and programming? So this slide should look familiar to you from those conversations that we had around implementing the recommendations from that bond audit. And this Trillium image is really trying to attempt to visualize how the bond programs and investments and activities deliver on these voter-approved mandate of healthy habitat, but also improving outcomes related to access, and tried to simplify these into these 4 buckets here you see in these petals. And at the center of all of this, as a public institution, our role is to provide public service and build public trust, and we do that through providing services to the people and land of the region. So Council affirmed this approach in 2024, and today's conversation is an opportunity to come back and go into more detail as needed. So we would recommend continuing to use something like this broader definition and being able to get into specifics where needed rather than one narrow definition, because as we heard from you all and from community, it takes that broader look at benefits, recognizes that we have a different role in the region and we work with our partners, and there's pieces that we play and that our partners play. And yeah, so I think with that, I'm going to pass it to Beth to go into a little bit more of the details of this Trillium.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Well, good morning, Council President Gonzalez and Council, Beth Cohen, she, her. So we can go to the next slide. Just want to flag that today we're going to talk about this blue petal of proximity and experience. But if something like this is helpful for the other petals, we can sort of come back or come in briefings and talk to you about those as well. So before we dive only into the blue petal, I want to just spend a minute talking about the full Trillium and reminders of how we got here, since it's been a little bit since we talked about this with you. So as part of the early days of bond implementation, we worked to develop an evaluation framework to better articulate the impacts of bond investments on the region, really staying in line with the bond criteria of racial equity, climate resilience, and community engagement. What the framework does is it helps us connect shorter term activities and investments in data to broader outcomes through a theory of change. If we do this, we think this will happen in the long term. So it's really a description of how and why a desired change is expected to happen. We like this evaluation framework because it helps us prove and improve our work, and also is iterative. So as you're hearing about things today, know that we can adapt and be responsive. But the main story that we're trying to tell with this Trillium is, because of our work on healthy habitat, bond investments increase access in 3 ways. So the first, I'm going to talk about the other 2 and then talk about proximity and experience, but community empowerment is really a recognition that when all bond investments and programs are shaped by community in a meaningful way, community can be empowered to be co-creators of their parks and natural areas. So this is really about access to decision making. The economic vitality petal is about the benefits that parks and nature confer on our regional economy through attractiveness overall, tourism, and specific to the bond, contracting and workforce opportunities, and a recognition that access to nature is a key part of what makes our region a desirable place to live, work, and visit. So today we're focusing on the blue petal, which is proximity and experience. And the vision statement for this impact area is that visitors of all backgrounds, ages, and abilities are able to have a variety of nature experiences to strengthen their relationship to the natural world. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. I'm going to spend the next few slides kind of diving a little bit deeper into this impact area, and then hand it back to John to highlight, kind of elevate and talk more about storytelling. This is a little bit more of like the guts of the framework. There's a lot of detail underneath that I'm trying my best to summarize. I'm happy to share more today or in a separate space if that's helpful. So our working theory of change for the proximity and experience impact area is that making the region's parks and nature sites accessible and inclusive can help lead to increased use of the region's parks, trails, and nature, and a greater sense of community ownership. So in other words, we want people to feel safe and welcome in all parks and nature sites across the region. The long-term outcomes that we're measuring progress to that fall under this impact area are summarized on this slide. So these outcomes are meant to look out a bit, 20 years, and recognize and be grounded in the things that we can control as like a park provider, a grantor, and a land protector. So they are intentional access, creating opportunities for communities to connect with nature through stewardship and cultural activities, proximity to parks and nature, increasing distribution and the number of parks, trails, and natural areas, experience at parks and nature sites, what happens when people visit our sites and others in the region. And then beneficial land acquisition, this is one of Metro's, the things we do kind of uniquely. How are we acquiring sites to protect opportunities for parks and green space as the region grows and changes, and really support local and regional priorities for that. And then the final one is utilization of regional trails, increased investments in the regional trails network that leads to more opportunities for use and the benefits that come with that. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So we're going kind of one level of detail down. So those are the long-term outcomes. We took those and worked with staff to identify specific metrics and data sources that allow us to measure progress to those outcomes over time. And this slide is just meant to summarize the kind of categories of metrics that we can use and are using to indicate progress over time to these long-term desired outcomes. For example, like things like a metric would be like, how many ADA barriers are we identifying in total? How many sites are we addressing ADA barriers to? Or we're looking at the local share and grant awards each year and understanding what types of project these are and where are they located. And those are things that would be specific to proximity and experience. So our data is not meant to get to a specific numeric target, but to kind of point to trends over time. And why? So it's like, are we meeting our expectations of where we want to be? Are levels consistent over time? Those sort of questions are what we can ask and answer with this every year. So what we have been doing, and when we talk to you, if you like this Trillium, we're going to start some of the data collection. We've been sharing it with our oversight committee, and it's the kind of thing we can report on annually. So it's nice to be able to come back and kind of update you on where we're at. We do collect information within these categories annually, and we do compile it in our reporting to the oversight committee. That's something that you see each fall. Obviously, you see kind of at a high summary level, but there's a lot of detail kind of underlying that. And so what this does is it allows for an ongoing evaluation of how we're doing, and really starts to build a language about how are we addressing the bond criteria. We have a lot of data, some of which we're going to highlight today, but also you may have feedback as we're talking through, like, yeah, like this set isn't that relevant or compelling, and this is a fair time to share that feedback as well. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So before I turn it back to John to kind of talk through some stories, just want to do some level setting on proximity. I think it's kind of helpful for this discussion. So there's a couple of statistics on this slide that maybe you heard John or others reference more recently. This is really related to Metro's role as a park provider and our role in kind of the regional system of providing parks, trails, and natural areas. At Council's kind of request and questions, which was really helpful, we completed a spatial analysis of the proximity of Metro destination sites, which includes our parks, boat ramps, and Lone Fir Cemetery, places that we know we have lots of visitation to. And the analysis showed that almost every person in our service district, so 98% of the population, lives within a 20-minute drive of these sites. We also kind of zoomed out a bit and looked at not only Metro sites, but sites that we've dubbed big nature, sites that are 30 acres or more, and that include recreational and amenities, but not owned by Metro. So those are so we combined in sort of the big nature bucket, 15 of our sites and 86 partner managed sites. And we found that using this designation, 70% of the population in Metro's jurisdiction are a 10-minute walk from a big nature site. So this does not answer everything. This does not address all, how people are getting to parks without a car. I want to really acknowledge that. But what this shows is there's a good baseline of coverage of either Metro sites or big nature sites, and that's something that makes our region special. The other thing we found, that at a very broad regional level, the drive times were relatively equitable, so there wasn't really a difference for different communities in terms of their ability to meet this 20-minute drive time. But what this doesn't do, and just want to be really clear, it does not talk about the quality of experience. Does it feel safe and welcoming? Do people feel themselves reflected at the site? And then also want to acknowledge that not everyone in our region is able to have a car and get there. So that's quite important. We know transportation and transit is something you flagged before, so don't want to paper that over. We have been chatting with our planning partners, and they shared a recent statistic, just for context, that as of 2024, about 9% of households in our region had no vehicles. So that's not nothing, and it's important to acknowledge. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is just like a little bit level setting of our own portfolio. Again, this is something John referenced, but kind of shows it in a visual way. So we care for 20,000 acres across 150 sites. All of the sites are open to the public, but want to be really clear, we have about a third that are designed for formal access with amenities and with hardscaping and parking and restrooms varying degrees. 2/3 of our acreage is designed, like we call it, informal access. So nature first and foremost, no hardscaping. You know, folks might, there wouldn't be a parking lot or signage to pull in. Like Jen said, our system plan establishes these specific site classifications on the slide for our different property types, and that really is what we use currently to kind of help focus our planning, development, and management. And so these range from habitat preserves and natural areas, which is that nature first and foremost, to our regional recreation areas, which is the top little circle in green, which includes Blue Lake and Oxbow and our busiest boat launches, to our regional nature parks, which are Chehalem Bridges and Newell Creeks, and other of that sort of second tier of parks. And this is just important context when we're talking about site experience at our own sites, because we've kind of have this policy set to say at a whole bucket of our land, we're really not designing them for people to visit and be at. Okay, last slide is just a map. It's one of our newer maps that we've been working on. So this shows that information spatially, where you can see both our destination sites, which are those sort of teardrop points on the map, and our natural areas, which are designated in the diamonds, both green and pink. And the pink ones, we have partners that manage. And you can see those clustered in and around Portland. So I think with that, and this just shows visually that, you know, wherever folks are in the region, nature, and at least the nature that Metro provides, is never far. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it back to John to just highlight some stories.
Thanks, Beth. We can go to the next slide, please. So we heard you wanted us to help elevate some stories, and this came up, I think, in the week before where we had the levy conversations and some of the briefings. So the next few slides, we try to attempt to highlight some of these stories and some of the big progress that's happening. We also want to reiterate that we're still working with our partners in the communications department and GAPD, Government Affairs, to help continue to share these out through as many venues as possible and leveraging the exciting accomplishments that are planned ahead as well. So it's a nice moment to shine to highlight on a few mostly bond accomplishments, but also through levy the last 5 to 6 years. And to date, the bond capital investments have made significant improvements to open new nature parks, improve existing sites. We know that the site experience is much more than just being able to physically enter it, but it's like, how does it feel when people are there? How does it feel safe and welcoming? What are those amenities provided? So we've had over 20 completed projects at 8 Metro sites, and they're creating 2 main categories around access opportunities that improve accessibility and inclusiveness of developed parks. Projects include creating the 2 new nature parks like Newell Creek Canyon, Chehalem Ridge, but also making big investments in places like Blue Lake and the ADA accessible fishing pier renovation, the work that's happening at the Lone Four Memorial Garden, and some work coming up at the Farmington paddle launch for accessibility upgrades. The other things we did maybe are around addressing infrastructure and maintenance. So projects in this category help us operate and maintain or develop sites and investing in some of the failing in infrastructure at our oldest parks, like at Blue Lake and Oxbow. So we have the new operations facility at Blue Lake and welcome and office. We did major water system upgrades, building renovations, and some equipment purchases for the Oxbow Welcome Center. So a lot of work in that just infrastructure pieces. And a lot of this was shaped by community feedback and reflect priorities that we went through as we were building up to the bond and implementing. Next slide, please. We've also made progress on addressing ADA barriers at our sites. So we know that the investments to address ADA accessibility and improve universal accessibility for all is really critical. And so to date, we've identified cataloging barriers across our sites and over 700 issues that I identified that we've been working on. So we've been implementing specific projects to address these barriers, either as standalone or as part of other infrastructure improvements, really focused on creating access to those unique experiences at our sites. So an example is our ADA improvements at Graham Oaks to help complete the final section of the Tonkin Trail. We also did some ADA parking improvements at Oxbow. Unfortunately, the river washed away the ADA parking space at Oxbow, so we're working on that. But really looking at opportunities also in providing more signage in multiple languages and having more life jackets by water. We can go to the next slide, please. So feeling safe and welcoming a park can also come from a facilitated experience. Metro's Community Education and Stewardship Program serves as one of the front doors for community-led gatherings. Each year, our Community Education Stewardship team welcomes roughly 5,000 adults and kids to over 30 Metro-developed sites and natural areas each year to help for hands-on education and stewardship activities as well as public programming. There's folks we contract out with folks too for other providers to do their programming and services within Metro parks and sites, as well as Metro-led programming. We also have been partnering with the region's urban indigenous community and tribal members to help support the organization of cultural activities and harvesting at the sites. Some of the biggest gatherings that we have is like the Salmon Homecoming every October, which welcomes over 3,000 people to Oxbow each year. As we continue to engage with our tribal government partners as well to help inform our priorities, one of the themes we've been hearing a lot is, again, that access to cultural practices, and so making sure that we're really working hand in hand there. Finally, want to just flag also that as we're heading into the summer season, it's really important to mention we provide our life jacket giveaways and really trying to provide more information and awareness as people want to get into the water and want to enjoy it, opportunities to be educated so they can do that safely across the region. Next slide, please. So outside of Metro's own portfolio, a really significant way that we help to increase the number and locations and experience of parks, trails, and natural areas around the region is through our grants and funding programs like Local Share. So Local Share and those bond-funded grant programs and levy-funded grants are a critical part of Metro's efforts to help expand access to nature for everyone in Greater Portland. To date, the 2019 bond has supported over 75 local priority projects for parks, trails, and natural areas. As a reminder, that Local Share program allocates $92 million to 27 park providers across the region. So we've supported this since the bond measures first passed in '95, and it's been a really critical way to help that role of local park providers' role and Metro's role. And a significant majority of these Local Share projects we're seeing also are having some accessibility components or introducing new nature components at existing sites. Next slide. And finally, we also play a significant role in our relation to the regional trail system. Regional trails investments allow for residents to bike, walk, and connect with more of a connected system across the region. In 2022, Metro Trail grants awarded to 12 projects across the region for $19 million. We've got almost all of those IGAs completed and are making those investments. And while the project delivery is up to the local partners, we do expect that most of those will be completed by fiscal year 2030. One example, as you see on the slide here, is in Troutdale. There's a completed trail connection for the 40-mile loop at Sharon Nesbitt Park. It's at the heart of the park is a 12-foot wide paved trail that stretches approximately a quarter mile from the Gateway to the Gorge Visitor Center to the I-84 trail, serving as a continuation of the existing trail. It's a linear path that also seamlessly connects with that iconic 40-mile loop and offers opportunities for walking, biking, and exploring the Sandy River corridor. And we'll be coming back to you, I think, next week to talk more about the Regional Trails program. With that, we can go to the next and I believe last slide that we have, which is opportunity for some discussion. So, threw a lot at you. Hopefully a lot of this was recap and looked somewhat familiar, but we just want to understand, does this multidimensional concept of access still align with council expectations and the previous direction in 2024? And is there other information, or how does this information we presented align with council's expectations of us talking more about proximity and access? And that, thank you again.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. One quick question. Do we have our current kind of council-approved methodology or whatever framework, like a one-pager that we could share with constituents and things like that? Often, if we get questions.
You mean on the Trillium?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a great idea. We have, right now, we have like a web interface with it where it's on story maps, and we link to that in our annual report. I love the idea of just summarizing that in a one pager. And I think it speaks more to like, how do we make sure that we tell that story in a brief way?
yeah, thank you. Also something, anyway, just wanted to ask.
it's great.
If that was available. Councilor Lewis, your hand?
Sure, thank you. I kind of have two trains of thought here, and the first dovetails really nicely with Council President's. We were at the Beaverton Pride over the weekend, and it was great to have the paper trail maps. We had them in the whole fleet of languages all lined up there. That was great. But then I was talking to an individual who had very specific questions about ADA access, and there was not a lot of guidance in the map. And off the top of my head, I was like, you should go to Grand Oaks and Wilsonville. That's going to be the best one. But I'm wondering, since we are making such significant investment in close to community, do we have an online or other resource for navigating our whole system through like ADA access and improvement lens?
Thank you, Councilor Lewis. And by whole system, you mean the entire regional system, not just Metro's
Oh, just our
portfolio?
stuff.
Oh, just our stuff? We have our destination guide map that we provide, and within those, we have the little icons of, amenities and experiences and things like that. As we've been going through our ADA transition plan, we want to be really stringent on when we're calling a site ADA accessible, because we might have different programs and components. So it's a work in progress to be able to more fully express that. And we're fortunate to have partners and advocates in the community and the ADA community that are helping to help inform and guide some of our work, like representation on the Bond Oversight Committee, and through some of our partner groups. So we're committed to helping to make it more clear and accessible. And a lot of folks will also have other sites that some of the community and advocates have that go through and rate the regional systems and trails. And so they have a lot of their own standards that they're using and in their own assessments, which are really helpful for us as partners to go and see what is that user experience like. So I hear that as an opportunity for us to work on making it clear of how accessible our sites are and where we can make those improvements.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then my other question is, obviously, we are beyond at capacity with close to 20,000 acres and the management that we have to do of our own property. But I do think when we talk about the regional trail system, that's kind of in tandem or built upon the statewide trail network. And the most significant statewide trail network piece is actually the Willamette River Trail. And I would like for us to think through more how we connect our trail system to that river trail. And I'm curious if you've had any thoughts about that. There's also some other regional assets that are either state or other jurisdiction owned that are regional, and how we partner with them, in particular, like Forest Park reads a whole lot more like a state park or a metro park than a City of Portland Park, but a City of Portland Park. How do we dovetail with these other investments that are regional in nature?
Thank you, Councilor Lewis. To clarify, you're looking at ways that we can better leverage not only the Willamette River as a water trail, but also the land-based trail network that helps to get there.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I don't know if there's anything really specific, and you are gonna get the trail expert, Robert Spurlock, next week, so we can definitely queue this up. I mean, I think I will share that, the regional trails collaboration with our local partners is one of the most robust areas where we're doing that. And so just speaking from the bond perspective in terms of those investments, we have the prioritized list for trail, we have dollars to actually acquire trail gaps in the regional system. And so so we're working, council approved a set of those priority trails to acquire gaps. And there's ongoing conversations like all the time with those local partners to figure out which ones to acquire, which ones are feasible, which ones they want us to acquire. So that part of the program is really driven by the local partners and their need and what's feasible for them. And I guess I'll also share that Robert, as part of that sort of trails body of work, is continually seeking feedback from our local partners on additional trails needs, recently more on like the operations and maintenance side, just to understand and how Metro can continue to play that convening and support role. So I want to recognize that doesn't fully answer your specific question, but that's more the context I could share.
The only other thing I would add, Counselor, is that we're working to plan a river tour for counselors to go along the Willamette and visit some of the Metro sites and kind of cruise down the river and get a chance to see some of the other partners and those kind of things. So we were looking at September, but we'll continue to work on some of that scheduling. So it's an opportunity for you all to see firsthand some of the places that we manage, and as well as pointing out some of our partners' work along the river.
That sounds great, thank you.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, I'll go on that tour.
Yeah.
September is hard because at least 3 of us will be at JPAC for a whole week, but.
Maybe we'll make some adjustments. We'll work around your schedule. Might
Just
need,
don't plan it on top of the JPAC trip.
yeah, you might need rain jackets if we do it later in the year, but you all are Oregonians, so you don't mind the little rain.
I don't mind a little rain.
Having just looked at stuff for September's hard, but we'll find a time. We'll find a time. Can I build off a question that Councilor Lewis just had? You're talking about the accessibility project and the different metrics and things that we're working with, both internally and external partners. What do you imagine a timeline is for some of those things to be finalized, or is it more of an iterative, continuous improvement process? Like, when can we have a product?
Yeah, so thank you, President Gonzalez. It's an iterative process, and while we've got with all those identified pieces to transition and work on, even as we complete some of those, new ones show up, right? So some of the challenges we have are like cross slopes of sidewalks and trails, and as nature does its thing and things settle, those things need to be constantly monitored. So we do have some big things that we've achieved, like the Blue Lake fishing pier, right? And put in a lot of good hardscape, and those things should last for a while. But we've got, I would love to get, maybe we can have some briefings or have Will Cortez, who's our ADA accessibility capital planner, that's helping to like drive a lot of this work and the completion of it. So I think there's different projects, but we could look at how we can, map out what are all the identified opportunities for improvement and just sort of how we're progressing to those things, as well as where we are identifying or being informed of new opportunities to make those accessibility improvements.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Great. Any other comments or questions for staff? Great. Well, I just to wrap up, sincere appreciation for you to continuing to bring this up to us. I know access is something that we're discussing. I am very much in favor of this comprehensive view of how we assess accessibility through like a multi-dimensional view. And I always want us to resist the urge of applying like some kind of quota system or something like that, in which we're counting folks and more through this philosophy of engaging partners. And I think this is really appropriate and exceptional, and hopefully setting the bar for what others across the country should be doing.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. And just as I'm trying to help make sure I'm getting clear direction and feedback, I'm seeing head nods that this model and this approach is still continuing to work, as well as continuing to bring back some more of the specific, metrics and those things, as well as other work we have to do to help provide those connections to nature and working with our transportation partners. I'm seeing head nods.
And then give you all some better tools to be able to share that more broadly.
Yeah.
So that's a follow-up. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And I think y'all are tracking the Future Vision project that we're working on, and we just did a regional values engagement survey, the top 3 things that came through in that people value the most, but they also want to see in 50 years is they want the region to continue to be green, they want it to be safe, and they want it to be welcoming. And I think that our parks are a huge part of what makes that like the region sparkle, and will continue to. So let's lean into what people are telling us that they want and use that energy.
Thank you very much, and we invite you to visit some of our busiest parks this weekend, because we know it'll be very, very busy. Weather's going to be a little bit cooler, but yeah, with the 4th of July holiday weekend, we expect to be very busy with a lot of folks enjoying the area, and we hope that everyone does it safely.
Yeah, thanks. No fireworks at the park.
And keeps it clean. Thank you. All right.
All right, thank you. All right, council. We're moving on now to some business items, and we have a resolution with us today. Resolution number 26-5587 for the purpose of adopting the 2027-2030 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program. This resolution is a critical piece of legislation for Metro that helps us plan regional investments in a transportation system that matches our values. The MTIP, the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, is a tool for implementing projects and programs that appear in the Regional Transportation Plan. Funding for these programs and projects have been approved by Metro Council and JPACT as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, as well as the Oregon Department of Transportation and our transit partners at TriMet and the City of Wilsonville's South Metro Area Regional Transit that also goes by SMART. The MTIP team today are Jean Seneschal Biggs, our Resource Development Manager, Gabriela Lopez, Senior Transportation Planner. Gabriela, we're seeing a lot of you in the last few weeks, so it's great to see you again. And then Blake Perez, Associate Transportation Planner.
Great.
Thanks.
How about that? Oh, there we go. Now it's on. Thank you, Georgia. Well, good morning, Council President Gonzalez and councilors. I'm just going to say just a little bit here just to set some context before I hand it over to Gabriela and Blake. But really pleased to be here today. This is our final stop on the path to adopting our 2027 to 30 MTIP. It's been about 18 months of work to get us here, also in coordination with our partners at ODOT and TriMet and SMART. This is something we do every 3 years, where we look ahead to the next 4 years of transportation investments across the region that are regionally significant, that have federal funds. You often have items on your agenda to amend the MTIP, usually once a month, as projects move forward. This is just our moment in time to sort of do the bigger look ahead as we adopt the next program for the next 4 years. So with that, I'm going to let Gabriela and Blake share their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Good morning, Council President and Councilors. My name is Gabriela Lopez. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm going to start the presentation of the 27-2030 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program and the recommendation for adoption presented forward to you today. Next slide. Just a quick refresher of what the MTIP is. So this is our federal 4-year financial document. It is required by the federal regulations, and this document, it's a planning document that identifies all federal transportation funding that will be spent in the region in the next 4 years, as well as regionally significant projects that may be state and locally funded. It is updated and adopted, as Jean mentioned, every 3 years, and it is required so that we can ensure the continuation of that federal funding and the delivery of the projects included in it. The MTIP does have the purpose to outline the implementation schedule of these projects in the region, as well as manage the delivery of these projects, which does come forth through amendments at a monthly basis. It also demonstrates how these projects comply with all federal requirements and regulations, such as fiscal constraint, which has an emphasis of not overspending available revenues with the proposed programming of projects. And it also demonstrates how the near-term plans transportation investments and programs will advance the region's goals as adopted in the Regional Transportation Plan. Next slide. Some key milestones that have led to this adoption: in summer of 2024, Council did approve the adoption of the 2027-2030 MTIP program direction, which just provided clarity on the investments to be included as part of the 2730 MTIP. Along with it was also the revenue forecast that was conducted through staff. And in summer of 2025, we completed compiled the project list with regional partners through each of their individual allocation process, as well as Metro's allocation process, which is through the Regional Flexible Fund allocation project selection. In fall of 2025, with that compiled project list, we began the performance evaluation and investment analysis for this packet of projects. And this included to evaluate the projects relative to RTP policy objectives and goals, as well as federal requirements. And this also tracked the performance of the package itself. In March 2026, we did release the draft for public comment period. It was a 30-day public comment period as required by our public engagement guide, and we gathered the feedback through this process and presented it back to TPAC and JPAC. And in June of 2026 is when the adoption draft was presented to TPAC and JPAC for approval and recommendation. Next slide. I'm now going to pass on the presentation to Blake, and he will be presenting on the investment profile of the adoption draft.
Thanks, Gabby. Can you hear me? Don't touch the buttons. Thanks, Council President. Thanks, Metro Council. I'm Blake Perez. I'll be presenting the next few slides. The adoption of the 2730 MTIP includes $1.2 billion of investments spread across 149 projects and programs. Next slide. Similar to other MTIP cycles, maintenance and preservation is the largest investment type to the 2730 MTIP. These are routine or restorative investments that keep existing transportation infrastructure in a state of good repair. Next slide, please. Actually, go back. Capital projects make up the second largest investment type in the 2730 MTIP, and the remaining investment profile is funding going towards projects and programs focused on transportation demand and system management, operations, and planning. Next slide, please. Of the capital investments, the adoption draft of the 2730 MTIP has nearly an even split of investments between active transportation and highway and roadway projects, with 35% and 34% of capital projects investments appropriately. Approximately 28% of the capital project investments are going towards transit. Next slide, please. The 2730 MTIP has approximately $226 million in investments aimed to reduce crashes and improve safety. This is a 46% increase from the previous MTIP cycle. Next slide, please. As part of each MTIP, a multi-part performance evaluation is done to gauge how well the cycle's investment package contributes to the region's transportation goals. The MTIP was evaluated against the 5 goals of the 2023 RTP: equitable transportation, safe system, climate action and resilience, mobility options, and thriving economy. The evaluation mirrored those performance measures used in evaluating the 2023 RTP to the extent it could assess the composition of projects and programs in the 2027-2030 MTIP. Overall, the $1.2 billion package of investments maintains or makes minor progress towards RTP goals and outcomes. There's an increase in the overall investment focus on addressing fatal and serious injury for vehicular crashes, with a particular emphasis on addressing vehicle crashes on those roadway facilities in communities of color and with lower incomes. There's progress on completing the pedestrian and on-street bicycle network, with a focus on completing gaps in the pedestrian network near frequent transit stops and stations in communities of color and with lower incomes. A particular emphasis on completing pedestrian and on-street bicycle network in job and activity centers as well. Cumulatively, these investments are addressing key activation active transportation gaps that shift commuter travel from vehicles to cycling and create a viable travel alternative. Next slide, please. What is included in the final package? Exhibit A is the 2027-2030 MTIP adoption draft with each of those chapters listed there. Exhibit B have the corresponding appendices with all of the detailed work associated with it, with each of the chapters. Exhibit C is the complete programming of projects, individually listing each of the projects in the MTIP. Next slide, please. And here's our timeline to adoption. As previously mentioned, we have visited with TPAC and JPAC and with recommendations to approve. Today we're here seeking asking recommendation for adoption. After today, we will be submitting the MTIP to the governor for inclusion in the STIP. And then this fall, there will be approval by FHWA and the FTA. And October 1, the 2027-2030 MTIP must be operational. Next slide, please. And before we have the action requested, I'd like to thank our regional partners, ODOT, TriMet, SMART. I'd like to thank Metro staff from the DRC, from forecasting and modeling, who have helped with this. I'd like to thank our comms team as well, who did a lot of work with this, TPAC, JPAC, and of course, any public comments as well. So a lot of eyes and a lot of help with this to get to this point. So I want to thank each of them. It's been quite the journey, and we're happy to be here. And with that, we recommend approval of Resolution 265587 to adopt the 2730 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program for the Portland metropolitan area as stated within Exhibits A, B, and C. And our presentation is over. Happy to answer any questions.
Fabulous presentation. Council, any questions or conversation before I ask for a motion? No, see none? No reflections? Well, I'm a fan of the presentation. I like how you highlighted some of the trends over time, highlighting specifically how our values as a region are being highlighted differently from the past MTIP package in a really clear, kind of a digestible way. So kudos to the team to helping hopefully folks watching in the audience, but also people in the region understand something that is often made too technical for people to really even know how to dive into the MTIP. So I'm grateful for that and the commitment that y'all had in that.
Thank you.
With that, Council. Oh, sorry, I did not see your
technical
hand
question.
raised.
Thank you, President.
Yeah.
What's the interplay between the MTIP and the RTP? I should know that. If you could do a.
Who wants to
Whoever.
How much time?
I would say the MTIP implements the objectives identified in the RTP. So a lot of the project lists that are in the RTP constraint list, if the project has the available funding to advance and implement a stage or a phase within the work, it would be required to be included in the MTIP. And it is something that we also need to ensure with the MTIP as part of the federal compliance, that it is consistent with the RTP constraint list of projects. So it's the implementation of the RTP projects as available funding comes forth for the individual projects.
I think you've done a good job of like capturing our region's values and expectations. Like, which one of these processes is the best place to manifest that, I guess?
I'll try that one. The RTP is really the overarching document that sets our policies and our goals for the transportation system, and we do that collaboratively with all the jurisdictions within the metro region. And as you saw in the presentation here, as we're developing the MTIP, we're evaluating it against those goals that we set out in the RTP. I think that's where we see those new ideas emerge. We see existing ideas evolve over time. So engagement in the RTP is going to be starting up. We're kicking off that work. We've been kicking off that work this year, and we'll be adopting the next RTP in the fall of 2028. So we're now at that moment of let's look ahead to the next RTP. Where do we want to take that as a region? So I think engagement there can have the, I'm going to say sort of the, potentially the largest impact in terms of our goal setting. MTIP projects themselves have their own engagement and goal setting for those projects where they're, the engagement on those projects is happening within those communities where they're occurring. So kind of different scales. That helps. You're nodding your head, so
Yeah, so
hopefully
like
that's
the
making
MTIP
sense.
is
Yeah.
enabling the RTP.
Yeah, it's documenting how are we funding those investments that we've already identified through the RTP process. Yeah.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the way that I think about it too is like the RTP is the kind of the shell that welcomes projects. But one of the important things that I learned from my time on JPAC is Metro doesn't propose projects, right? Like we don't own projects, we don't implement the projects to the degree that the cities and the counties do. So we're really just the place that the region comes together to sum all those things up. And but it's just an important little detail that I always think about. Councilor Lewis, your hand, and JPAC Chair Lewis.
Yeah, sure, thanks. I wasn't going to say anything because I think the work stands for itself. And I think that the work of this large document and large body of work is interesting because it overlaps in terms of some of our projects are technically difficult, but we're not only addressing technically challenging and funding challenges, we're also, this is where rubber meets the road in terms of working between jurisdictions when they share an asset or when an asset passes through multiple jurisdictions. So this represents where planning can get challenging. And I think this is the one and only place where we really look at that role as convener and sometimes mediator in envisioning what we're doing on specific assets so that you don't have a bike path that suddenly leaves off or you don't have a lane that suddenly disappears when you cross over a jurisdictional boundary. So this is the place where we're really doing that complicated planning. One other kind of level that I think is important to note is that ODOT at the regional level is starting to do a capital improvement project list. That's new for ODOT. They're really struggling to figure out how to get more than just 1 or 2 projects per region. And our region has been challenged to have 10 projects. So that's somewhere in between where the MTEP lives and where our RTP is. And I think it's really important for us to be really strong with our MTIP since things could get clouded with the introduction of the CIP and a couple of the really big projects in our region taking up a lot of the airtime. So just wanted to kind of add that context as well for something new for ODOT.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's important to really track that. All right, seeing no other hands from the council, I will call for a motion on resolution number 26-5587.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. So moved by Councilor Lewis, seconded by Councilor Simpson. Thank you both for that. Any additional discussion on the motion on the table? Okay, seeing none, Georgia, if we could please call roll on the vote.
Absolutely. Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
Counselor Simpson?
Aye.
Counselor Lewis?
Aye.
Counselor Wong?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Aye.
And Council President Gonzalez.
Aye, thank you. The motion passes unanimously. We've implemented this MTIP. Thank you for your hard work.
Thanks, Council.
Thank you.
All right, now we have our final bit of business, ordinance number 26-1547 for the purpose of amending Metro Code Section 2.19.280 to add 1 member to the Supportive Housing Services Regional Policy and Oversight Committee. Council, you'll remember we held a first reading and public hearing for this ordinance on June 25th. We did not receive public comments at that time. Today, Liam Frost, our Housing Director, is available to answer any questions you may have. Hey, Liam, yeah. And also, do we potentially have public testimony today?
Yes, we do have folks who've signed up to testify today. I just am looking to Carrie to see if this is permissible, considering it's the second reading.
Yes, Georgia and Council President Gonzalez, members of the council can waive its rules with unanimous consent and accept additional public comment today if you would like to.
Okay, thank you. Liam?
I have no additional comments for the presentation today unless you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have individuals that are interested in testifying, Georgia?
Yes, they're right here in the audience, if that's
thank you.
okay.
So I'm just going to look to the council for a general thumbs up as Carrie mentioned, with unanimous support, we can allow for testimony in the second hearing.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, excellent. So we will welcome public testimony. Thank you. If you could please
Great.
introduce.
Yes, absolutely. I can just quickly read the rules for.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. If you are here to testify on ordinance number 26-1547, now it's time to do so. If you're testifying in person, please sign up by filling out a blue card in the back of the room, bringing it up to me. If you are testifying on Zoom or by phone, please sign up using the raise hand function in the reactions or more menus or by dialing *9. When it is your turn to testify, I'll call on your name or phone number. If you're on Zoom, I will promote you to a panelist. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes. Timer begins when you begin speaking. If you are testifying in person, their timer is located on the table, on the wall, and on the digital screen. Please state your name for the record before testifying. And now we have Oscar Arana to, your time will begin when you begin speaking.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much for letting me provide public testimony today. For the record, my name is Oscar Arana. My address is 777 Northeast Jessup Street, Portland, Oregon, 97211. And I have the incredible honor of serving as the CEO of the Native American Youth and Family Center. I'm here to support ordinance number 26-1547. As you may already know, the Portland metro region is home to more than 90,000 Native Americans. There are over 380 different tribes that are represented in this area. Our region has one of the highest concentrations of Native Americans in the country, and this is largely due to past government policies whose impacts are very much present today. I would want to thank Metro President Gonzalez and Metro Housing Director Liam Frost for their leadership and work done to bring this ordinance forward. This ordinance recognizes a simple but important principle. Better policies are made when those making them include experts and communities with first-hand knowledge. Adding and including a voting member with substantial knowledge of serving the Native community will improve the housing policies made by Metro's RPOC committee. There's a lot to be said when an oversight leaves our community out of important decision-making roles. But what's most important are the actions taken once that oversight is realized. This ordinance is a thoughtful and practical step toward more effective and inclusive governance and more equitable policymaking. By adding this voting member, Metro is investing in better informed decisions that can improve housing outcomes and reduce homelessness rates for the Native community. I respectfully urge you to vote yes on ordinance number 26-1547. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oscar, for coming and providing that testimony.
Thank you. I see no hands raised and no other blue cards today.
All right, thank you. So council, do we have any additional questions for staff about this ordinance? Seeing none, if I could please call on a motion for ordinance number 26-1547.
So moved. Second.
All right, moved by Councilor Lewis, seconded by Councilor Nolan. Any additional discussion for the motion on the table? Seeing none, Georgia, could you please call roll on?
Absolutely. Councilor Simpson.
Aye.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Yes.
Councilor Wong.
Aye.
Councilor Lewis.
Aye.
Councilor Nolan.
Yes.
Council President Gonzalez.
Aye. Thank you. The ordinance passes and we're able to move forward. Thank you, Liam, for bringing this to us. And thank you to our guests. We will now move to Chief Operating Officer Communication to begin to wrap up our meeting. Deputy COO Craig Stroud is with us. And I understand you have an update for the WPES RWAC committee, potentially. Is that right?
I believe that's been deferred to next week.
Okay.
Although if you're willing, I'd like to give a Metropolitan Exposition Recreation Commission update
Oh, yes.
instead.
I'm going off of what's in front of me. But
No, sorry, apologies. We
no
confused you.
worries. Let's do Merck.
Okay. Council President Gonzalez, councilors, the Metropolitan Exposition Recreation Commission met yesterday afternoon, had a busy agenda, a lot of working topics, and so I will run through that really quickly. First was a financial update, and several commissioners expressed concern with soft transit lodging tax collections. Region-wide, or city-wide, we're down about 4% year-to-date, which translates into a little more than $400,000. The request was this fall to, when we look at our 5-year forecast for the venues, to also incorporate a year-to-date look to ensure if that trend continues, that we've taken proper steps to address the operating budgets to maintain sustainability. On good note, we're seeing a little bit of uptick nationally in travel, and in the region, we've got several months of increasing occupancy and revenue per available room, key metrics for the hotel industry. So perhaps we're seeing a little bit of uptick. We'll continue to monitor, but that was a point of discussion yesterday. We had several action items where MERC approved the International Longshore and Warehouse Union contract that just was negotiated, as well as the International Employees of International Union of Operating Engineers contract. So those two contracts were ratified by MERC yesterday. We then had an approval of the Expo Center scheduling policy. You were briefed on this a couple of weeks ago, but that policy included some key updates to help us continue to move towards a sports pivot. But the main points were we refined our strategic positioning as a public regional asset focused on economic prosperity and livability. It incorporated enhanced economic impact criteria, including hotel room night generation, revenue potential, and repeat business. It included updated scheduling priorities for large-scale sporting events while maintaining a diverse event mix. It created long-term booking criteria tied to room nights and space utilization at the Expo Center. It streamlined event spacing policies, and spacing meaning like events don't happen too close to one another that they degrade the ability of either to be successful or the center to be successful. It improved the financial and contracting clarity, including deposit requirements, and it continued and expressed our commitment to equity and public stewardship. That passed unanimously, so now we have a new booking policy in place that will support our sports pivot. And then finally, the MERC received the same presentation that you all received last month on the historic memorialization update, the sports marketing update, as well as the operating model for sports moving into the future. Similar to how council received it, it was well received. Some questions from MERC around specifics, but generally endorsed. And so now with the plan endorsed for the capital improvements that we'll be doing over the course of the next 18 months, as well as now the operating model and updated scheduling policy, we're well on our way to transitioning to that new hybrid model come winter of 2028. That would conclude the MERC report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. And Councilor Rosenthal was also there as a representative if he has anything he'd like to add.
Thank you, Craig. Councilor Rosenthal, I know that you might have some details to share.
Nope.
Okay, great.
I covered it.
Councilor Lewis.
I have two questions. The first, can you remind us why MERC does those two CBAs while we do the other CBAs that also touch MERC venue employees?
Well, I might look to our legal counsel for the specifics, but I believe this is a legacy condition that extends from when MERC operated much more independently, and then over the course of time, it's become closer to Metro and policies and HR policies and pay and compensation. But these specific contracts that exist at MERC only are generally approved and ratified by MERC. We do have employee groups such as AFSCME that span both MERC departments and Metro core departments. Those would come to Metro Council. So it's really the legacy contracts.
I guess I'm thinking as IATSE is kind of the other one that we approve, though they're mostly at MERC venues.
I believe IATSE is only at the MERC venues. And once Portland 5 transitions, IATSE 28 would no longer exist at Metro, and just the B20, which are ushers and admissions agents, would be a remaining contract from MERC.
Has that one come before us, though? I seem to recall it did. We can talk about that later. I was just curious. My other line of questioning is along the lines of Merck and the awareness around the Rose Quarter closure, and if you're adequately resourced to deal with 6 weeks of extra special traffic around your venue.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, all eyes are focused on those closures and what it means for our clients, our exhibitors, and our staff. I know the convention center, ODOT has done a nice job. I want to compliment them on outreaching to convention center staff early and beginning those conversations. Convention center staff are partnering with Travel Portland for kind of client and external communications. And they've got, I just saw their newsletter this week that addresses internal staff communications, and they'll continue to beat that drum as we march closer to those closures. But yeah, ODOT's been a great partner. I know they came earlier this week to present to you as well. So I feel like we're in good shape. We'll have to, and that was presented yesterday at Merck as well, this closure. We're in good shape as far as information. We'll just have to bear and grin it as we endure the closures.
Yeah, no, I think it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot for our employees who are trying to get to work on time. It's also gonna be a lot for folks who get off the airplane, get on the red line, and all of a sudden are in the middle of something they didn't anticipate. So
correct.
I hope you have the resources to continue to welcome them to Portland and give them a good experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Wong, any comments or questions?
Oh, yeah, thanks. President Gonzalez, on the 4% reduction year to date, is that something that we're seeing nationally as it relates to maybe less tourism from Canada or something like that? Or is it like localized to our region?
There's two answers to that. Your first observation around international travel is accurate. Travel coming out of Canada is particularly down this year, although I think it's soft across all sectors. We'll see how World Cup would affect that in the full year's picture. Locally, in the Portland market, we are lagging the recovery of other major cities with transit, lodging tax, and hospitality, productivity. That's not uncommon for us to either lead or lag nationally, but at this point we can clearly indicate, looking at our peer cities and national trends, that Portland's struggling to recover. Last summer we did not see a summer tourism bump that we would traditionally see in July and August. Fingers crossed that this summer performs better. We're seeing, again, those slight couple of months of uptick. But it is concerning. There's lots of folks that we're in conversations with at the partner and government level, keeping our eyes on it and trying to plan through it, as well as address the underlying issues that might be driving it, like perception around safety or perception around how the region's performing.
Thank you.
Sweet, thanks. Yeah, it's one of the things that it's one of the representatives on the Visitor Development Fund, which I serve on with Councilor Simpson. We've had the opportunity to see some pretty overarching economic data on our tourism. And I think what's interesting is data, you see it through the lens that you want to see it, right? So I think if someone wants to be like, well, in the last 2 years, we're doing better than we were 2 years ago. But then if you look back to 2018, it's just like night and day. So it's always the kind of the parameters, and I feel a significant amount of urgency. I know Councilor Simpson does as well, to help turn that perception around of this place as being one that is visitable and one that wants to be hospitable to folks that want to enjoy what we love every day. Craig, I want to bring something up to you as well, kind of in this context, maybe not Merck related, but related to our venues. And don't know quite the way to put it, but I'll just say that I do feel concerned with kind of some of the lack of progress I'm seeing on the P5 transition with our partners at the city and the city council, to be more specific. I want to make sure that they understand the full breadth of what is coming to them, and I do not have the confidence that is the level of understanding that I think they need to have to make the strong decisions that they will need to for the facilities, but also for the people that are working there right now. So I would love to work with you to come up with some kind of direct communication to the city council. I know that we are working with the administration on the city, and potentially that includes the executive and the mayor's office. But also I think the city council needs to have some TLC. And so I would like your help on on making sure that we do that appropriately and expediently.
Sure. Glad to help with those efforts.
Thank you. So, excellent. All right, seeing no other communication, I will move to adjourn our meeting. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for July 7th at 10 a.m. Thank you.